Extending a frame is going to allow us to basically pause the screen. Whatever's happening on the screen, we're just going to freeze it for some period of time. So let me show you a couple of ways of doing this and why we might want to do this. Here I found a place in the middle of my screencast where if I go ahead and play this, watch my cursor here, and as I go and just move this, it goes up, and then down, and then back up, and then down, and then back up, and down, and around. So I'm frenetically moving this mouse around. It's quite a distraction, and it's not something that I like to do. It's something that I do occasionally, and after I look at it at the end, I say, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. So learn from my lesson and try not to move the mouse around too much. It can be a distraction. So let's say I want to hide that. One way I can do that is to basically just pause what I see here and not have the mouse move for a few seconds. To do that, I want to extend the frame. The way that I prefer to do that is to hold down the Shift key and E. Now when I do that, notice that it's going to insert a little bit of time, and here it says, how long do you want it to be? I'll leave it at 1 second for now. I'll say OK. Now what this has done is inserted this 1 second of time. If I look at the end of my track, I can see that it pushed it out. So one of the warnings to get right at the beginning here is when you extend a frame, you will change the timing. So what I like to do is take that extended frame, slide it up, and then slide my video back and let it play below. So let me show you what I mean. It's showing up here on top that it's staying still, and when I get out here, the mouse is moving, and there we go, it goes up to the top, and that's what I want. So maybe right about, I'll move back to close to where it was there. So I'm looking at the timeline and I say all of this time in here is ridiculous. I don't need to have all that movement. So now I'm going to grab this and stretch it to that point. So now when I play over this, nothing happens, and then I move my mouse up to the top to the menu. So this is why I use extend a frame. I want to hide something that's happening in the background. So I gave you one warning, and that was that you will get things out of sync when you use extend a frame. Number two, if you're using auto stitching, it keeps these items together and it's not easy to move this around. So like I said, my preference is to bring it up a track and slide it over. If instead I go over here to another point in the video, and I'll go back to and put auto stitching back on. So I'll go to Edit, Preferences, and I'll say Enable Auto Stitching. Okay. And I'll go to this point and I say this is where I want to extend the frame. Shift E. How long? 1 second. Okay. I can see I can't move that. I can't, when I go to try and drag it up, I can't because there's something here. It's all still one contiguous track. And so I would have to go in and do a split here or a split here in order to get that piece out. So that's the primary reason that I don't like auto stitching, is because I like to use this extend a frame. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Now I mentioned Shift E is what I prefer, but you can also go up to Modify and extend a frame that way. Now you'll see here it's grayed out. Why is it grayed out? It's not extending anything because I don't have it selected down here. So as soon as I select it, I can go back up, and now I can extend the frame. All right, the same is true if I have my playhead up here and I try Shift E, nothing's happening. It's not extending anything because nothing's selected. So start by selecting and then use either the Modify menu or Shift E in order to get that frame out. Another thing you can do instead of extending a frame is you can go to Share and you can export this frame as. So when I look at this single frame, I can save this as a JPEG or as a PNG. Now we're going to talk about Share in a much later section. We're going to do that, I believe it's in Module 6, where we get to production. But I do want to show you it is another option. It creates a separate file. Once that file is created, you'll need to drag it into the media bin, and then from the media bin, drag it down here. But I do know some people who prefer that. My preference is to extend the frame. Now the last bit of warning I want to give you is about the cursor itself. When I look at what I've frozen, that cursor was frozen there because that's what I wanted. I didn't want to see that cursor moving around frantically. But there may be times, like if you're looking at a PowerPoint slide deck and you want to freeze a frame or get that slide, that your cursor is going to appear there, and you don't want that cursor on your slide. So what I do is I select the media, and then I go up to the cursor effects, and I just change the opacity all the way down to 0, so there's no cursor there at all. Once I'm done, I can bring the opacity back for my recording, and then it can continue on with the cursor there.